What's going on, everybody? You know who it is. This is Austin, and this is the Austin Smith Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about real estate and we talk about lifestyle. And today's guest was a little hard to get a hold of, and the main reason why is because either she was out of the state or out of the country, abroad somewhere. And ironically, that's exactly what today's episode is about. Leveraging real estate, using the income from your rental properties to fund your lifestyle, to pay your bills, to pay your expenses. So that way you can do things like stay outside of the country for 7 months or half the year or 2 weeks or whatever else that you want to do in life. Whether it's traveling or whether you want to grow the biggest garden, using real estate to fund your lifestyle. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into today's episode. Be sure to log on and sign up on austinsmithrealestate.com there so you can start getting a bunch of the free content sent straight to you. Articles, podcasts, videos, the whole kit and caboodle. There's a bunch of content for you to learn from. And if you have received any value by listening to the show, please log on to iTunes, leave me a rating and review. Let's continue to share this message. Let's continue to share this sugar. And without further ado, let's get into the show. What's going on, everybody? Today on the show, I'm glad and I'm excited to bring this guest on. As you'll be able to tell from the title, I couldn't wait to bring this particular guest on to have the chance to gain her insight, to see and tap into, what she does on the day-to-day basis. Today's guest, she's an active real estate investor, an active real estate agent. She joined the realtor side of the business only a year ago, and in her first year she was awarded Rookie of the Year, and she was involved in the $1 Million Sales Club Award. And as an investor, she currently owns four multifamily units within the area, and we'll get a chance to talk about her first deals, how she got in control of those, what's cash flow looking like, things like that. And she's a Scarlet Knight, and Rutgers is her alma mater, which we'll get a chance to talk about, what she studied there. She's worked for several Fortune 500 companies, but it was a burning desire to become an entrepreneur, so she got a chance to quit her job, dive in full time. She's also created Diva Keys, which is a mentorship program for beginning investors, and it focuses primarily on women of color. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Natay Hayes. Natay, thank you for taking the time to come on the show.
Thank you, Austin, for having me. Thank you for the great work that you do through this podcast and getting the knowledge out and important information out to the people who need it. So kudos to you as well.
I appreciate that. We'll jump right into it. I really had to shorten the bio because it's definitely you have a lot of accolades, and we'll kind of get a chance to talk about that right now. Getting started, how did this all start? Take us back before real estate investing. What were you doing before, and how did you make that transition into real estate?
Certainly. Before real estate investing, human resources by profession. So I went to school for labor studies and psychology. I did probably what everybody was told to do: go to school, get a good job, get a good education, climb the corporate ladder, or so I thought that's what I was going to do. And very shortly, probably into my third job after graduating, I decided I was not able to climb anybody's corporate ladder, and I had to figure out another way. So that's sort of where it started, at least the entrepreneurial side of me. I did a whole bunch of MLMs, trying to figure out a way, how do people not work a job until they're 70, 80 years old?
Would you say, as far as your studies in school, would you say that helped you become an entrepreneur, or that helped you develop some skills that you use as an entrepreneur, or was that mainly for your job after college and for corporate America?
Yeah, I'm going to say the latter. It was mainly for my job after college and for corporate America. It showed me exactly where I didn't want to be and
Mm,
exactly what I didn't want to do in a
gotcha.
nutshell. Hmm.
Okay, so you've transferred into real estate. You're starting to get some business going. You've created Diva Keys. Can you just talk about that really quickly?
Sure. Again, I've been probably investing. Bought my first house 8 years ago at this point. And as you mentioned in my bio, I decided last year alone in 2018 to become a realtor. At that point, I was, let go from my job. So I'm like, what else is there that I can do to also, sustain myself financially? So I'm like, let me just utilize my license. I have bought at that point 3 houses. So how can I help others on this journey? And so it was a perfect marriage, got my real estate license. And ever since, helped 10 people last year alone purchase their first investment property. Two of those were single-family homeowners. The other 8 were all multifamily homeowners. And so I noticed people started coming to me asking me questions. How do I get started? I was working on a rehab. It's not common to see women in the rehab industry.
Mm.
And so I'm like, this is an awesome opportunity for me to focus particularly on women and women of color and getting them this information. So that's when Diva Keys was birthed. Diva Keys is really how do I get more women investing, not only at, the professional age, but the high school age, where investing, period, is an important concept, or it should be in our communities. So Diva Keys is a mentoring program where I mentor hands-on. I take them through my rehabs. I take them through the numbers on my property. I take them how I got started, because everybody wants to know, well, how did you get started? How much money does it cost? And if they don't know, they don't necessarily know where to start. So they don't take those actions. They don't take, ways to begin to get themselves on this journey, because all they think is, I don't have the money, not really even knowing how much it costs, or my credit is bad, not even really knowing what it takes. So I have those conversations from the beginning to get people encouraged.
I too actually find that people think that it's really really like elaborate, and it's not. But once you are actually able to, and I also believe that you actually have to be a good teacher, but being able to break down that process so that they do understand, and it's a skill that is often developed, and that comes with some of the leadership qualities. So we thank you for that. And where, like, if I'm an individual that wants to learn more about their mentorship program, how can I get in contact with you?
Sure, that's awesome. Right now, a lot of it is being developed, but I am on Instagram, and I do share a lot on Instagram and Facebook stories. I'm sharing usually what I'm doing day in and day out. I share a lot of numbers on my deals, a lot of numbers on my clients' deals. I'm taking my phone and my camera, walking through these rehabs, walking through these guts. So every day I'm out there in the trenches. So that's probably most important, but I can be found on Instagram as Diamond Stamps, Diamond, Diamond, Stamps, Stamps. That's one word. On Facebook, I am Natay Hayes, my name, Natay, Hayes, Hayes.
Awesome. So let's talk about this, because I would be somebody to participate in the mentorship program, because I'm like, how do I, like, I've already quit my job. I got that under my belt. I'm working on the travel of the world for 7 months aspect of it. Like that's one of the goals. I mean, yeah, I have no idea how I'm going to accomplish that yet. So I want to get into that. And obviously real estate has helped you in some ways, but before that, let's talk about your first deal, which I believe you mentioned was 8 years ago. You bought your first
Correct.
home. Talk to us about your first deal, kind of how you found it, the funding, the numbers. Take us through it.
Sure. So I'm going to start a little bit before my first deal, actually, because before I bought my first property, I had a deal that was under contract for about 9 months, right? So I was one of those people. I was probably making no more than $45,000 a year in my first job. And I'm like, I'm only making $45,000 a year. You know, all I can afford is a $70,000 property. That's what I'm thinking in my head. I'm like, I need to go where I can afford. So not knowing that I could afford more, I ended up in Trenton. I'm like, this is great. It's $70,000. It doesn't take a lot for me to get into it. Let me start here. So I worked on that deal for 9 months. It fell through. I don't remember the reason it fell through, but it fell through. I was devastated. As you can imagine, it's your first deal. You're super excited, and you work on it for a long time. You spend a lot of money.
Right.
It doesn't happen. Lo and behold, you know, some things that don't go through, it wasn't meant to be. You can't see the bigger picture then, but looking back, it was the greatest thing that could have ever happened to me. So I hook up with my lender, and I shout him out all the time. His name is Santi. And he pre-approves me for a mortgage of might have been like 230,000 at the time. So here I am thinking, I can only afford 70,000. Let me go where I think I can afford, not knowing what I don't know. And I was also in New Brunswick at the time. Trenton was a bit of a ways for me to get down there. So that fell through. My deal that I currently live at, the one that I bought in 2011, I happened to find it through a realtor. I used a realtor. I probably printed out maybe like 30 or 40 homes. I literally went through all of the homes, and I found this one. Happens to be in Newark. At the time, I didn't want to be in Newark. I was like, put me anywhere besides Newark. But then I started seeing the homes. I actually bought a new construction. They call them the Bayonne box homes. So the 3-family homes, the 3 bedrooms in each unit, 2 full baths, car garage, 2-car garage, backyard, everything, you name it. I fell in love. I'm like, this place is huge. The rents was great, and I was getting it for a steal. 2011 was when everybody was losing their homes, the turn of the market. Mm-hmm. So these houses were going for $500,000. I ended up scooping mine up for $220,000 at the time. So I had a couple of, maybe, $20,000 saved up, but I was able to save up for the property simply because I had downsized a little bit before purchasing it. I rented out a 1-bedroom. I was paying like $480 a month to live there, right? So I decreased my expenses dramatically so that I can prepare myself for home ownership. So $220,000, I used FHA loan. As you know, 3.5% down. I probably came down with about $9,000 out-of-pocket expenses. There's plus closing costs and inspections and things of that nature. But it was amazing. From the day one, my property has cash flow. Not only do I live for free, I have cash flow about $400 or $500 a month in the last 8 years, and I have never paid into my mortgage. Like, my unit is always filled, and my tenants, they're always paying. So not once have I missed a mortgage payment. And that is huge because we're talking about discretionary income. Not only are you living for free, most people's biggest expense is rent or mortgage every single month. And so when you don't have to pay those things, now you start to have extra money at the end of the month so you can go out and do things like travel the world. So that $220,000 property that I purchased in 2011 is now worth a little bit over $500,000 8 years later.
Awesome. Did you do anything with the equity, or are you just sitting on the equity, or did that set you up for your next deals?
Good question. I actually took out a home equity line of credit probably back in 2017, maybe. I used the $50,000 home equity line of credit to then fund my third deal, which happens to be a rehab.
Beautiful.
So I did.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So the listeners can understand, where do you get your money from? And the number one, or the two things is, one, I can't find any deals, or two, I don't have any money. And, it's all about leveraging exactly what you have. Like, there's always a resource that's around you that can contribute to your funding that you wouldn't necessarily think of. So you took your HELOC, your home equity line of credit, and you've used that to fund the very next deal. So obviously now you're essentially buying property without using your own cash.
Correct.
Right. Awesome. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So these next deals, now let's get into it. So why did you quit your job, travel the world, and come back as an agent, or like how did that, like, did you quit your job to travel the world, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Talk to us about that. Like,
Yeah, so this was probably back in 2014 at this point. I was working one of my jobs, actually at the Liberty Science Center out in Jersey City, as most people may know, may not know. I was doing human resources again. And I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I've always loved traveling. So I started to look at the calendar. I'm always a numbers person. I'm like, well, I want to go to like these 20 countries, and at my vacation level, it'll take me the next 5 years. You know, if I'm traveling a week, with my vacation time, it'll take me 5 years to get to everywhere I want to get to in the world. I'm like, or I could just quit, do it in 7 months, and knock off like 5 years of my life, right? Essentially. So that's exactly how I thought about it. I'm just a big believer, you know, we only get one life. Life could be very short. I don't know what tomorrow holds. I know what today holds, and I know this is what I want. So I decided I was going to quit. And at that time, I was already at my job for a couple of years, so I had money saved up. And again, back to my first property, right? I'm not paying a rent or a mortgage, and I'm making like $400 to $500 a month to live here. So most of my paychecks, I'm able to save. I'm
right.
saving. And so I was doing this for a while, and I knew my next thing was to get a second property. So I'm like, okay, well, I have the time, I have the money, or I can create the time. So I have the money because I've been saving. And while I'm away abroad, I'm going to rent out my house, rent out the rooms in my house, have somebody here to watch my house anyway. And it was a win-win situation. I'm like, I'm out of here. So I originally asked my job for a leave of absence because I had to come back. I still wasn't financially as self-sufficient as I am now, or that I would have liked to be. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do when I come back, but I'll figure that out later. And I feel like if I can make income and my bills are still relatively low, it wasn't really rocket science. So I asked for a leave of absence. They told me no. I came back with my resignation letter the next day. And I went to 16 different countries over the course of 7 months.
I absolutely, I love that. I love that. And just, you know, the feeling of being able to, you know, kind of quit your job. And, you know, this podcast is not about quitting your job. If you're perfectly happy at your job, stay at your job. Like, if you love your job, you love your job. Like, just understand that It's a source of income. No problem with that at all. But obviously it is liberating, whether it's your job or anything, like a relationship, where you're just able to say, like, I don't want this anymore. And have that flexibility to adjust and then to go after things that you actually want to go after. So like this, does real estate to this day now still fund your traveling expenses? Like, does it still fund your ability to travel freely and travel for extended periods of time? Like, you just came back from
Africa.
There you go. And you were there for how long?
A month.
Oh, okay. There you go. So as you're there, obviously the you know, the cash flow is still coming in, the renters are still paying, like they're doing what they have to do. Yes. And that's the beauty of it.
Yes, sir. They are. So I can still afford to travel. If I wanted to travel for another 7 months, I can. I'm not going to. There's a lot of parts of the business that I'm developing and being a realtor. My preference right now is to stay here on the ground. So when I get tired or when I get bored or I need a break, then I take a month vacation or a couple of weeks here. And so I spent my 36th birthday traveling Africa. I was in Namibia, South Africa, and Mozambique. And I was just like, hey, I'm going to go for a month, and I'll be back when I come back. So like you said, it's nice to have that freedom. And it's freedom to do whatever you want, whenever you want, no matter how that looks. And it looks different for everybody. For me, it's my love of travel. So for you, it may be, basketball. For other people, it's their children. They want to spend more time with their family. So it's always about the freedom to do what we want, when we want, and to have the money to support, the things that we love.
I have, and before we kind of start our descent here and before we get into the core four, I have the question, and it's kind of a selfish question because I definitely want to know this for myself. What would you say to the individuals when you're traveling for a month and away from the business, or away from at least, where the business is for a month? How do you manage to keep things going while you're away? And how do you me as a slight control freak and slight workaholic, I feel like I always have to be there. But obviously, I would like to get to that point where I travel for a month or X, Y, and Z. So how do you run the business abroad, and how do you just manage just being away from the business?
Gotcha. So it's a lot of it comes down to planning, of course. As you know, you're a realtor yourself. Winter time is typically a lower season for people that are looking for homes.
Right.
So I planned it according to the winter. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to have as many clients, so now's the perfect opportunity for me to step away. Two is I now have help. So as I begin to mentor people, they sort of, not, I don't want to say they work for me, but they work with me, and so that I'm able to start giving some of my files,
I like that.
in light of training them so that they can learn as well. Yeah, so that's what I do. And then, I have team members. My attorney, she handles things from the attorney and while I'm away. And my lender, he also makes sure the file goes through, because just as much as these individuals are my clients, they're also their clients. And, I sent a couple of emails while I was away. I'm in touch with some of my clients because, I think it's so important to let them know, hey, I'm here for you if you have any questions that, the people who work with me can't answer. So in some aspects, I'm still available. In other aspects, I may decide, hey, I'm going to just travel, but I'll be doing the work and travel, so you can call. And a lot of our business is also mobile, right? So we don't need to stay in a brick and mortar spot. We don't really need to be face to face all the time. And it allows us to still be in communication. So you still got to set up people so that there are 100 me's, because I can't do this, all the time. There's only so many hours in a day. So you have to set people up to do what you do. And a lot of people do. They want to learn that information. So it's an awesome give and take.
I like how you use those resources. The one of my clients, her name is Sharon. Shout out to Sharon if she's listening. The interesting part about that particular transaction is I had just got engaged, and me and my current wife now, we're traveling.
Congratulations.
And I appreciate that. In St. Thomas, I think it was. And it was so cool because I was talking to the agent, and we're literally putting the deal together, like, in St. Thomas. And I thought,
Right.
like, that was awesome to be able to do that. And, like, just that moment in time, it was like, I don't really need to be here. But obviously when you're in, like, grind mode and the emotions come in, you're like, nope, I'm in the grind, like, here's where we go. So, yeah, but it
Right.
was an awesome feeling.
Okay.
Okay, so what's next for Natay? Last question before we get into the core four. What's next? Do you continue buying? Do you go harder on the mentorship program? What's next?
Great. So, yes, I will always continue buying. I actually just closed on my fourth deal on Friday, this past Friday. So that was
Congratulations.
very exciting. Thank you. And I'm looking for, like, the next 5, like, tomorrow. I'm like, when can we get in these properties? It's like a drug. When can we get these properties? Let's see them. Let's put them in the contract. I want to develop a portfolio and manage a mega real estate empire as a Black woman, because I don't see us out here. So I want to be that face. Looking to delve into the commercial space, looking at a couple of bigger projects, bigger buildings, 30 units plus, may not be in my backyard in New Jersey. Probably going to end up venturing out somewhere. And eventually I'm going to take a step back from the agent aspect of it. And again, my goal is to train up more agents, / developers or investors. And so I can start working more on Diva Keys, which is the mentoring, like you mentioned, working on the ebook, working on the e-course, and really how to get my information out
Nice.
to more people.
I love that, and you're maximizing, on your value, and that's exactly what you were here, to do on this particular earth, and you can tell that it radiates from you. One thing that you actually mentioned that I wanted to piggyback off, you mentioned that especially being an investor and on the grind as a Black woman in the business of real estate, which you don't see often as far as developers. And real estate investors. Not to say obviously that they're not out here. Why do you think that? Why aren't we having these conversations about, building wealth more often?
We haven't had them, maybe to the extent that we should start having them. So it hasn't been something that's been passed along. Just the example that I use with even myself and going out to Trenton to purchase a $70,000 two-family home that I knew nothing about. I just knew, hey, I just want to invest. I know it's going to make me some money, or at least I think it's going to make me some money, but not necessarily having anybody around to say, I see that you want that option, but here's an option that can serve you better, or here's an option that's, a better deal for you, and here's why. And you don't think you can afford it, but let me show you that you can afford it. And nobody's having those conversations with us to tell us, not necessarily just to go out and work for money, but how to make your money work for you. So it's been, in a sense, generational. I'm not going to say everybody, because at some time, there was the Black Wall Street, and we did have businesses and things of that nature. But in this day and age, sort of everybody's going to school. The market is definitely changing, and we aren't necessarily prepared to work outside of that spectrum. And so we go to work, go to school, and the market instantly changes, and now you have 500 stores that are closing. So there's none of the high schoolers can go to work at the malls anymore. So what are we doing? This AI taking over of everything. And so we're not necessarily prepared. The market changes so fast, and we're constantly having to adjust and catch up. But we're still so far behind a lot of us in a lot of instances that it's hard for us. And, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, and again, you don't have a bunch of discretionary income, the last thing on your mind is investing. You're just worrying about how you're going to feed your kids the next day or two, or whatever it looks like.
Right.
And so we got to start bringing these conversations in a lot more often, and showing them, hey, like you mentioned, we can start exactly where you are, because it is possible for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those, it is one of those conversations that need to happen more often. And on the positive side, I also think that we are doing a really good job. And I think social media has helped spread that message, and what we put on our social medias and the people that we follow, and being able to share and keep those images in the limelight, so that way people subconsciously can develop the aspiration to invest, the aspiration to do something if they see other successful people that look like them doing exactly what they would like to do. And we are doing a great job, and but it still needs to happen more often, only because we have a lot of psychological undoing, not our fault, but psychological undoing that will just take time. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And but the consistency is there. It's just the fact that time just has to amplify that consistency.
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
Core 4, the four questions that I ask each and every guest on the Austin Smith Real Estate Podcast. Question number 1: what is your favorite aspect about real estate?
My favorite aspect, I love the buy and hold. Everybody usually hates it, but I tell people all the time, in my 8 years, I have never been a landlord-tenant court. My rent is always in by the 5th of the month, and it's been kind of surreal, honestly. You would think like 8 years is a long time to have something happen with your rental properties and somebody not pay you, damage your house, but I have no horror stories. So it shaped my experience as a landlord, and I kind of want to say I just kind of love that aspect. And then I'm always having conversations with my tenants, in fact, trying to get them to become homeowners. I'm like, you've been renting to me for the longest time. Here's how much rent you paid me over 8 years. So maybe it's time for us to get you your own house. And I love it. And it's really about relationship building. And don't get me wrong, people might still take advantage or whatever have you. But as long as you do what you do, a lot of people, they'll respect that. And the outcome is usually, it's a good one. So I like being a landlord, and I like my buy and hold.
Awesome. Question number 2: favorite business or personal development book?
You probably get this a lot. My favorite book is Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, though.
Yes.
I remember reading that book the year I graduated Rutgers and sitting in my room on the floor. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am never going to work a job ever again. And that's when I made the decision to start to get into multi-level marketing. And ever since, I've made some money here, made some money there, but it didn't quite work. And so to this day, here I am, like not working a job. So even that is just surreal. It's like, wow, I remember this like it was yesterday. So Rich Dad Poor Dad totally changed my whole outlook on life. Thus, here I am.
Awesome. Question number 3. Well, I think I know the answer to this question, but fun things that you like to do in your spare time.
Yes, without a doubt, traveling. I love traveling. The second part is I ran track, middle school, high school, ran at the collegiate level for a little bit. I'm actually about to take on a coaching position and see how I can
Nice.
fit that into my busy schedule as well. So I love to run and stay in shape.
Awesome. And last but not least, Natay, where can people find you at?
Yes, so again, Instagram, Diamond Stamps, DIAMOND Stamps, STAMPS. Facebook, Natay Hayes, that's first name, last name, NATAYHAYES.
Awesome. Natay, thank you so much for coming onto the show. It's definitely an inspiration to hear how you've used real estate to kind of leverage your lifestyle and being able to create your ideal lifestyle through the means of real estate. And, you're just getting started. And I think one of the more inspirational pieces of that is the fact that, sometimes I bring on guests where they've done, one of my guests has done, over 1,200 deals. The other one had 30 rental units before 30. And, but it just, and some people might find that daunting because they're like, how can I go from, having nothing to now I got to find a way to go up to 30 or 1,200 or 50 or whatever that number is.
Right.
And, you're in the perfect analogy of slow and steady wins the race. And
Right.
you have been just consistent and disciplined to know what you have to do. And that in turn has been able to unlock some time and money for you to be able to create the life that you want. And I think that's awesome.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Austin. Again, thank you for having me. I appreciate this and the communication that you're doing, getting our information or the information out to the public who may need it, and those of us still in the industry that are always looking to grow and extra, tips and ways to learn because it's a never-ending, learning journey. And I'm grateful for the work that you do for sure. So I was very happy to be here and to speak to you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natay. Greatly appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Austin. Have a good one.
All right.